Who are you?
I am the ghost of R.W. Chicken.
The ghost of my rubber chicken? My rubber chicken is an inanimate object. I don't think an inanimate object can have a ghost.
An animal what?
Inanimate object.
An enemy project?
Inanimate object.
A man-made hobbit?
Inanimate object.
An enemy pot roast?
Inanimate object. Inanimate object. Inanimate.
I'm here to help you.
Help? Me? How exactly?
I, like my poor dead carcass, am here to aid you in teaching your young hatchlings in the art of media literacy and video production.
Dead carcass is a redundancy.
Redundancies? I don't know.
Never mind. So how are you going to help me teach exactly?
Well, I made you this owl.
Okay.
And I made you this.
All right. Okay, so how does this help me?
Well, today we're going to learn about L-cuts and J-cuts.
Oh, but I know what those are. That's when you have...
Of course you know what they are. You're a video instructor. But your hatchlings don't know what they are.
Hatchlings?
Your students, the little hatchlings. I believe you call them, calves.
Kids.
Calves, kids, whatever. Why don't you grab those letters and start teaching them how it's done?
Oh, okay, well, all right. So, an L-cut is when you have a piece of video, but the audio is still over here a little.
I don't understand
when
what
you
you're
have
saying.
a piece of video and then the audio goes here and another piece of
That's
video
not
goes on
making
top.
any
And
sense.
the J-cut's kind of the opposite.
You're not a very
so
good
you've got
instructor, are
video
you?
and audio, and then it's... Well, how should I do it then?
How do I know? I'm just a chicken. You're the instructor.
So I do all the work. What are you helping me do exactly?
I'm here to provide grandeur, panache, a little excitement to your videos. I'm a star.
Yeesh. I don't think I'm going to like working with you.
I don't think I'm going to like working with you either.
All right. Scram.
Fine. I'll scram.
I'll show him how it's done. In order to perform an L-cut or a J-cut, you basically just extend audio either to the right or to the left, depending on whether it's an L-cut or a J-cut. When you extend the audio to the right, it's an L-cut. When you extend the audio to the left, it's a J-cut. So let's take a look at this exchange between the chicken and myself, edited before we actually make these L-cuts or J-cuts.
Well, today we're going to learn about L-cuts and J-cuts.
Oh, but I know what those are. That's when you have a...
Of course you know what they are. You're a video instructor.
So we can see that the pacing of that isn't at all what we want. First of all, because I've been interrupted by the chicken, and the way that it is now, I stop talking and then he talks. I need to be interrupted. And so when you want to film an interruption, you definitely need to have that J-cut. An interruption is almost always going to be a J-cut. Another thing to think about when you're talking about L-cuts and J-cuts in a scene of dialogue is when you shoot your singles or your close-ups, you definitely do not want to have any overlap in the dialogue. You don't want to have one person talking while another person is talking. Even if there's going to be an interruption, you don't want them to actually interrupt each other while you're shooting the close-ups. When you're shooting the master, when you're far and you have a two-shot, then there can be interruption, there can be interaction, there can be audio overlap. But when you're shooting the singles, the close-ups, you want those lines of dialogue to be by themselves. And then you can edit interruptions and overlap in there using L-cuts and J-cuts. So, first of all, there is a lot of room tone in this scene. I had lots of horrible room tone. So, right here, this clip right here is some room tone that I'm putting over it to kind of even it out. This is not obviously the final cut. This is not great audio. So this clip right here is just room tone I'm laying down underneath the scene. And I have two clips here because I've green screened the chicken, obviously, in front of just the picture of the classroom. So if I hit V, which is a shortcut for disable or enable, to disable that clip of the chicken, we can see that it's over just a regular clip of the classroom. That's why I've got these two layers of video here. And the shot of me is just that one single shot. But my audio right now is embedded into the video clips. In order to get our L cuts and J cuts, we need to take our audio outside of the video. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on a clip, in this case the clip of the chicken, and I'm going to go up to Clip, click, and click Detach Audio. As we can see, the shortcut, if we know our shortcuts, is Control-Shift-S. So I can either go up to Clips, go down to Detach Audio, or if I know my shortcuts, Control-Shift-S. That will take my audio out of the video clip. So now if I disable my video, I'll still be able to hear the chicken talk, but I won't see it.
L cuts and J cuts.
Because my audio is separate. If I click on the audio and disable that, I'll still see it, but I won't hear it. They're separate now. Now what I'm going to want to do is have an L cut over myself. So we're going to have the chicken still speaking when we cut to me. So when he says
To learn about
L cuts and J cuts, right about there, I'm going to want to trim my video, but not my audio. I'm going to leave my audio the same. So I do have snapping turned on. Remember, the shortcut for that is N to turn it on and off. But my playhead's here, so I'm going to want to trim that there. Now, of course, I'm going to need to trim that other clip of the room. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that room. Now, we're going to cut to myself, and we're going to continue hearing the chicken. And I might need to time this out a little bit.
Learn about L cuts and J cuts.
Oh, but I know. Okay, so that's much better. So
Cuts and J cuts.
oh, so that's an L cut. And the reason why it's called an L cut is because we can see that the audio continues where the video stops. The video goes here, and the audio continues here. So you can see it's kind of shaped like an L. That L shape right there. So we continue to hear the chicken as we cut to me. That's an L cut. And that helps with our continuity in scenes of dialogue. It really sells the fact that this is happening at the same time.
L cuts and J cuts.
Oh, but I know what those are. That's when you have it.
Of course.
Now that is really bad because we want the chicken to interrupt me. So again, I'm going to click on the chicken clip. I'm going to go up to Clip, click, go to Detach Audio, or what's even easier, if we remember the shortcut, Control-Shift-S, and there is my detached audio. Now, I'm going to need to extend that so that it interrupts me. But instead of actually extending this audio, I'm actually going to cut back on this video. So, and again, I'll need to work on the timing to make sure it's exact, but snapping is on, so let's see what that looks like. That's when you have it.
Of course you.
Not quite, because we do, if that isn't a J cut, he does start talking before we cut to him, but I stop talking before he starts, and the way I want it is he's interrupting me, and I actually stop. You have it.
Of course you.
So I need to be interrupted, and I'm not quite interrupted there, so I'm going to take off maybe 10 more frames, 11 frames, that's good. And we can tell how many frames I'm taking off by this black box right there. So my trim tool's there. I've trimmed off 11 frames. But again, down here, my audio remains. And we see this shape right here is more like a backwards L than a J, but that's what we would call a J cut. And now I think my timing should be good with this interruption. That's when you have it.
Of course you know what they are.
Good. Now I'm actually interrupted. He starts talking while I'm still talking, so I'm interrupted. That's when you have it.
Of course you know what they are.
Okay, so that's a good J cut. So right here on this clip of me, we've got an L cut cutting to me and a J cut cutting away from me. So we didn't extract the audio from my clip here, although in the final I do have lots of extracted audio from clips of me as well. So let's take a look at this after I've edited the audio into J cuts and L cuts.
Well, today we're going to learn about L cuts and J cuts.
Oh, but I know what those are. That's when you have
Of course you know what they are. You're a video instructor.
Okay, so that's a much better pacing to those lines, and if we don't have L cuts and J cuts, we can't control the pacing of our scenes of dialogue. So that's why we definitely want to have L cuts and J cuts. It also helps with our continuity in scenes of dialogue. You can also use L cuts and J cuts for establishing shots, longer shots. You can use them really wherever you want. The first time I saw them used on establishing shots, was when I was working with a professional editor on a short film I made about 8 years ago, and I thought it was really nice. So we're going to take a look at an L cut and a J cut he made on establishing shots. So this is a scene where a man is talking to his boss. He's in danger of losing his job. He's seeing things going a little crazy. So he's talking to his boss, and behind him is a full Greek chorus that's only in his imagination. He tells his boss he needs to go to a doctor's appointment, and she responds in an unbelieving manner and says, "You've got to be kidding me." And we hear her and the Greek chorus say that as we cut to the next scene. So this is an L cut transitioning from one scene to the next. So let's take a look at what that looks like and sounds like. And notice that when we hear them talking, we cut to the next scene.
I'm sorry, I gotta run. I have an 11 o'clock doctor's appointment.
You've got to be kidding me!
Hopefully you've noticed that we cut to him walking down this path. We kept hearing them finishing up that line, "You've got to be kidding me." It's very subtle, but it's a really nice touch. So let's take a look at it again.
You've got to be kidding me!
So just really small, but that's a really nice touch. It really helps transitions from one place to another. Now that was an L cut. I'm going to show you an example of a J cut from that same film. He's meeting with his doctor, and he's going home to find his journal, and the doctor was wondering where he's going, but instead of having the doctor's voice carry into the next scene, the scene that we're going to has noise that precedes the cut. So this is again a J cut to transition from this scene. So let's take a look at this.
Edgar? My journal? Where do I keep my journal?
That is a really nice transition. We see the doctor, he's saying Edgar, and we start to hear the noise from outside before we cut to it.
Edgar?
So here's an example that I just shot of going from one scene to the next, and I have the sound such that I could use either a J cut or an L cut, but it will definitely help the transition between these two scenes. So I shot two short little clips that are just one shot. We go from one scene to the next, and I set it up so that we've got some sound that I could use as either an L cut or a J cut. As it stands now, I've already extracted the audio, and as it stands now, the transition from one to the next is a little bit abrupt and not so good. And so hopefully you'll see how it's helped with either a J cut or an L cut. Esther's supposed to have lunch detention with me today. Where is she? Esther!
Esther, where have you been?
Okay, so hopefully you saw that that transition between those scenes is pretty clunky. Because there's such a difference in sound. So there are two ways we could do it, either as an L cut or a J cut. So I'll show how each of those would look. So if I trim it this way, trim this clip this way, my screaming of her name would carry into the scene of the cafeteria, and we would see this would be an L cut. So and it would help the transition going from the scene of me at the desk to the cafeteria. Esther! So just slight, very subtle, but it would really help that transition from one scene to the next.
Esther, where have you been?
Okay, so I'm going to undo that because we also have the option of doing it the other way. I would take this audio clip and extend it this way, and so we would hear that cafeteria noise before we actually cut to the cafeteria. Esther!
Esther, where have you been?
Okay, so either of those really does help the transition. So I shot these two things with keeping in mind that I wanted to have some noise in the ambient noise for the second scene and something that we could carry into that scene. So that's why I was shouting so loud and long. So either a J cut or an L cut would be good for that transition, but it would definitely help to have one or the other going from that one shot to the next. So that's a little tutorial about L cuts and J cuts. For some scenes of dialogue, you're going to have requirements that you have to have L cuts and J cuts in that scene of dialogue. And sometimes it's also good to keep in mind you could use an L cut or a J cut to transition from one scene to the next. So good luck with your L cuts and your J cuts.